Sia lodato Gesù Cristo e avanti con Maria. Carissimi, vengo a darvi appuntamento dopo questa pausa estiva indimenticabile nella quale ci hanno acquisito Piccola Nazareth, ma noi siamo sopravvissuti perché ci accompagna la Madonna per un appuntamento imperdibile. Domenica 6 ottobre a Milano alle ore 14:30 ci ritroviamo, per quanti lo vorrete, per un momento di preghiera. L'ultimo nostro raduno è stato a giugno a Firenze, una lunga estate che adesso volge al termine. Vi aspettiamo con la corona del Rosario in mano, noi il popolo dei rosarianti, a Milano domenica 6 ottobre, prima domenica del mese dedicato alla Madonna del Rosario. Reciteremo insieme il Rosario, accoglieremo la statua della Madonna, benediremo tutti i bambini e faremo la consacrazione alla Madonna e la recita della supplica alla Madonna del Rosario di Pompei. Domenica 6 ottobre, Milano, avanti con Maria e a presto.
May Jesus be praised and onward with Mary. A holy evening to all of you, dear children. Now I'm inside because the weather didn't allow us to be outside. You can see that even here in Sicily, summer is slowly leaving. Slowly fades away. Here I say it with personal regret, even though I know for many it's a reason for joy, worse for you. You don't know what you're talking about. All right. To my left, to your left, there's the picture of Padre Pio. This evening, being Monday, it's time for the catechesis on the Brotherhood of the Most Holy Rosary. It seems we're heading towards 1,000 subscribers. It's a significant number, though many are still missing, but it's an important number. The left means we're moving towards 1,000 people. Every day pray 3 rosaries. I know there are many more, but to know it officially, because you know that the fundamental commitment for those who join the confraternity of the Most Holy Rosary, which is not a club for the chosen ones, is to recite the entire rosary. So this is, as you can see, the register we have, and we will take it back to Milan around for those who wish to continue enrolling with the solemn commitment to pray the 3 daily rosaries. It's Monday evening, so it's time to talk about the confraternity. Last time, the Monday before last, we concluded the apostolic letter of John Paul II, a tribute to this letter titled Rosarium Virginis Mariae, a most precious letter from the Pope. Speaking of the Pope, today was the feast of Padre Pio, so I should talk now as I mentioned this morning, but this is always a work in progress. It's the hallmark of Don Minutella, but it helps, it slips out of anyone's hands like this. I was supposed to talk again about the followers of Blessed Alan, but today is Padre Pio, so the topic is Padre Pio's devotion to the Holy Rosary. Before that, with the help of the production team, I want to show you how. First of all, hypocrisy of the Bergoglian progressives corresponds to nothing different, mutatis mutandis, to the hypocrisy of the traditional sedevacantists. They are both enemies of the small remnant because they hate us, but I'll prove it to you. First of all, I'll start with Tuccio Fernandez, whom I might talk about tomorrow morning, or maybe not, we'll see, but precisely regarding the... I'm on it. He went to a conference at the Pontifical Academy, Maria, something like that, with theologians, Mariologists, etc. And he spoke again about the explanatory note regarding the apparitions of Medjugorje, saying, who knows why? But the Pope encourages, we do not deny that there are supernatural acts, but we cannot say it openly, etc. And then he added, we did this to avoid the risk of mafia groups who use the Madonna to speak ill of the Pope and the Church. Look, in exorcisms, the devil, without wanting to, is forced by the exorcism and the exorcist to reveal himself. Same here. I feel pain seeing them welcome someone who deserves a different reception, who signed a document like a supplicant's trust. That is, it's an apostate document. Dear children, are you aware of the level we're at? Of complicity, priests, theologians, nuns, lay people who pretend nothing is happening, Someone who signed a declaration authorizing the blessing of gay couples? I don't know. On the other hand, it's not much better. I'm referring to Radio Spada. I give them publicity because I find them a bit endearing. They have insignificant numbers, so I want to help them. Radio Spada today, since it's Padre Pio's feast day, has done two things. The first thing it said, now the director will show the post from Radio Spada, that today is the feast of Padre Pio from Pietrelcina. Doesn't something seem odd to you? Father Pio, the Capuchin friar, Father Pio from Pietrelcina. Padre Pio from Pietrelcina was beatified and canonized by John Paul II. And since for them he's the Antichrist, he's not a saint, he's Padre Pio. Do you see the level we're at? The image of Padre Pio with Monsignor Marcel Lefebvre. This is something to see on Facebook. Shows an image of Padre Pio with Monsignor Lefebvre. Monsignor Lefebvre went to Padre Pio, I think it was in '68, when Padre Pio was already nearing death. And Padre Pio kisses the sacred ring. And why do they show the photo of Lefebvre with Padre Pio, but don't talk about Padre Pio's devotion to Paul VI? Why doesn't Radio Spada mention that Padre Pio remained obedient to Paul VI? They don't. Why is that? We can see that we are now witnessing an ideologization of faith. On the right, with the Lefebvrist traditionalist sedevacantists, and on the left, with the Fernandesian Bergoglians, there's nothing to be done. We remain as we are, Catholics. That was what I wanted to say as an introduction to the story of Padre Pio, which makes me reflect. They call him Padre Pio, not Saint Pio, because all the acts performed by the post-conciliar popes are, for them, in vain, null. Follow those of Radio Spada, the glories of the cardinalate. They are all cardinals from past centuries, unknown personalities, and they show images of Leo XIII, Pius X, Pius XI, Pius XII. Enough, they stop there. I hope they don't understand that they are victims of a satanic spell, no less serious than the Fernandesian Bergoglian one. Bergogliani, got it? Those ones give communion to divorced and remarried people and to gay couples. These others call Padre Pio. Padre Pio. Show the photo of Padre Pio with Lefebvre, but they are careful not to speak of Padre Pio and Paul VI. In my book that I have here with me, Padre Pio, Man of God, tell of the touching bond, in other respects, between Paul VI and Padre Pio, a bond that goes far back in time. But in my book, I include the testimony of one. And these are the rambling posts of Radio Spada, you see, you judge. And these are like Monsignor Vigano. They are the ones who, like Martino Mora, praise Monsignor Vigano. There is no figure like Monsignor Vigano who gets himself reconsecrated as bishop. Do you have any idea to what levels we have reached in Catholicism? He gets himself reconsecrated as bishop by Monsignor Williamson. Are you kidding? Monsignor Williamson, Richard Williamson, but is he the same as John Paul II? That is the Antichrist. John Paul II is the Antichrist, you understand? I'm saying then that Paul VI, in my book, this book is always available. It's really well done. In my book, at a certain point, I recount that Paul VI, there is evidence, wanted to go in February of 1968 while Padre Pio was alive by helicopter to San Giovanni Rotondo. He had to give it up at the last moment for unspecified reasons. Paul VI made some gestures. For instance, he went to pray at the deathbed of Don. The one from the Pauline family, Don Alberione, Don Giacomo Alberione. There's a photo of Paul VI kneeling, holding hands, praying, over the dying Giacomo Alberione. He
He
wanted to go, knowing that Padre Pio was now between life and death. Paul VI wanted to go to San Giovanni Rotondo to support Padre Pio in the final stage, a recognition. Then who knows what the Secretaries of State, the Freemasons, the Vatican might have done to stop him, just like they prevented John Paul II from using the word Russia in the consecration. This is the fact. This evening, I wanted to pay tribute to Padre Pio, since today was his feast day. And this morning, we had to talk about something else, specifically Medjugorje. So let's talk about Padre Pio and his devotion to the Holy Rosary. I start with what I find in my book on pages 32 and following. And then I tell you, see, this is Paul VI with Don Alberione, but there's actually a photo, you need to find it, of Paul VI praying. Anyway, this is already another story, otherwise people get confused. If not, people get confused. Here, so what I wanted to say is that Padre Pio cannot be imagined without the deep connection with the Holy Rosary today, celebrating Mass for the faithful present, thousands of faithful present. At Little Nazareth, I said that in '68 Padre Pio celebrated 50 years of Stigmata, and on that occasion the prayer groups he had founded came to San Giovanni Rotondo, and they asked him for a testament, because they felt and understood. You can see when a person is about to leave. And so they asked Padre Pio for a testament, and one is left speechless, because he is a man who amazed the entire world, who probably remains a witness, if not the reading, the privileged witness of the 20th century, the privileged witness of God. I, in my book, do not hesitate to call him Elijah, the prophet of fire. I'm not. One loses oneself in who knows what topics, because as one walks in God, when approaching death, life simplifies, leaving only the essential. And it's beautiful if love for God remains, sincere life, chastity understood as chastity even for couples. Be careful, because there is a chastity, let's say, of the consecrated, of priests, a chastity of spouses, which is not just about not engaging in sexuality. Chastity is also something else, you see. And then all this remains with you: love for others, acts of charity, a life of prayer. As you move towards death, this is what stays with you, not houses or properties, which start to lose their appeal. When someone hears they have little time left, they are still thinking about buying a house or the latest car model or branded jeans. Clearly, they are not starting to think about how to conclude their life. So Padre Pio was nearing the end of his life and made a testament. And one is truly moved because he said these precise words to his spiritual sons and daughters: love and make others love the Madonna. Pray and make others pray the Holy Rosary. This was his testament, and it is called so. After 81 years of life, 50 years of stigmata, and a life spent in the spotlight, Padre Pio departs saying these simple words, because when one is a saint, one approaches the end of life by simplifying everything. Love and inspire love for the Madonna. Pray and encourage the praying of the Holy Rosary. This, I repeat to you, is the testament of the great Padre Pio. Dove c'è un riferimento alla Madonna. However, there is also a reference to the Rosary. Here we get to the point. For Padre Pio, as it should be for all of us, love for the Madonna is inseparable from love and devotion to the Holy Rosary. For my part, although I am not a saint, and it's well known that I'm not, ask Radio Spada, I am very devoted to the Madonna, just as I am devoted to the Holy Rosary. I can't find a difference. And this was Padre Pio. The devotion to Mary, Mother of the Lord, was fervent in Padre Pio, intense to the point of tears, heartfelt, I write. My dear little mummy.
mammina mia.
Then even his spiritual father advised him not to overdo it with these little endearments. But he couldn't give up what is a gift of the Holy Spirit. Devotion to the Madonna, truly filial, where you feel she is a mother, is not a sentimental act. It's truly a gift of the Holy Spirit, especially granted to people like Padre Pio who have a special mission. Think of Totus Tuus by John Paul II. The French poet Charles Péguy wrote, "There is something worse than having an evil soul, and that is having a soul that is accustomed." The Marian devotion of Padre Pio revealed precisely this character of non-habituation, as it was a filial relationship. The Holy Friar felt it deeply, in a real and intense way. The way he addressed Mary indicates not an emotional, childish relationship. Perhaps there's a bit of that, but rather one that is profoundly robust and vital. What would we say today about the way Padre Pio spoke of the Holy Virgin? Listen, oh dear mother, yes, you are beautiful. If it weren't for faith, men would call you a goddess. Your eyes are more radiant than the sun. You're beautiful, Mummy. I take pride in it. I love you. Oh, help me. Father God from Pietrelcina. He seems like a child in what he writes, because this is also characteristic in the spirit of his departure in men of God who have a special mission. Keep them in a love for the Madonna that is practically remains that of a child. To all spiritual children then, but really to everyone, he recommended constantly invoking the Madonna and consecrating themselves to her to reach Jesus. Father Pio was also a Montfortian in the implicit sense of the term. I tried to look here and there when I wrote this book, which took me a really long time, this one about Padre Pio, to see if there was an explicit reference by Padre Pio to Saint Louis-Marie Grignon de Montfort. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist. We don't even know if Padre Pio knew him. I believe so. But he never mentions it, though implicitly yes, because he wanted all his spiritual children to be consecrated to the Madonna. Every genuine good spiritual father should do that, first and foremost, the consecration to the Madonna. The vital bond of Padre Pio with Mary, as I was telling you, was concretely manifested in the last message, September 1968, addressed to the prayer groups he founded, Love, and make others love the Madonna, pray and have others pray the Holy Rosary. This is written by Padre Pio. He really wrote it. This is my spiritual testament. Father Pio always had the rosary beads with him. He never left them. Many times he was photographed with his hands inside his habit in the front pocket, because that's where he kept the rosary. And he would let it slip through his fingers, day and night, never letting go of the rosary. To the Superior, Father Carmelo Durante, who on the 6th of February 1954 asked how many rosaries he had said up to that moment, the friar replied, "I have said 34. To other confreres who asked where he found the time to pray so many rosaries, he replied, "At night." What is it for then? Father Pio experienced an osmotic, self-identifying connection with the Holy Rosary. He couldn't imagine himself, first and foremost, without the Holy Rosary, because he experienced its strength and effectiveness. To Father Alessio Parente, who asked him why he preferred the Rosary over other prayers, Father Pio replied, "Because the Madonna has never refused me a grace requested through the Rosary." There's a vision that Padre Pio had about the power of the Rosary, which he himself narrated, and I recount it below. I'll read it to you on page 34 of this book of mine. One evening, Father Pio recounts, I was in the choir praying. When I was disturbed by shouts coming from the church square, I leaned out of the choir window and was met with a multitude of agitated people shouting, "Down with Jesus! Down with Padre Pio!" His enemies were evidently them, and therefore, presumably, the demons. I then withdrew and, speaking to the Madonna, I reported to her what I had seen and heard. It's a vision. So what does the Madonna do? She gave me, says Father Pio, a small weapon, and Saint Therese of the Child Jesus will say that the Rosary is so small, but precisely for this reason, as long as the Rosary is prayed, the world will be saved from the worst evils. She gave me a very small weapon that could be kept in a pocket or hidden among the hair by wearing it around the neck, the Rosary. I returned to the window and showed this weapon, waving it. Under the gaze of those madmen, they all collapsed to the ground, stunned. That crowd, as I told you, represented the enemies of Padre Pio, and he was able to triumph over them by reciting the Holy Rosary to Mary every day. The saint turned to it especially in the most painful moments of his life, when he was prevented from saying Mass in public, forced to lead a hidden and withdrawn life by the will of the Holy See. Padre Pio would recount that he managed thanks to the Holy Rosary. And so, on those violents, when the devil attacked him, because he confessed to the penitents who regained God's grace, the devil took revenge, and Padre Pio managed because he held the Rosary in his hand. The Holy Virgin is known to have healed Padre Pio multiple times throughout his life. When in 1959, Padre Pio fell seriously ill with a chronic pleurisy that forced him to stay in bed, suspending all activities, he could no longer confess or even celebrate. On the 6th of August 1959, Padre Pio learned that the pilgrim Madonna of Fatima had arrived in San Giovanni Rotondo, and with the help of some faithful, he asked to be taken before her to give her a kiss.
A San Giovanni Rotondo e con l'aiuto di alcuni fedeli chiese di essere portato davanti a lei per darle un bacio.
The statue of the Virgin was located at the Casa Sollievo della Sofferenza Hospital, founded by Padre Pio himself. They brought the statue to the hospital. After giving her a kiss, Padre Pio placed his rosary in the hands of the Madonna. Then he was led back to his cell. When the statue was about to leave San Giovanni Rotondo, Padre Pio wanted to bid her farewell one last time, saying, "Mother, I was ill during your visit to Italy, and now you leave without healing me." One of the two pilots of the helicopter transporting the statue to Foggia decided to change course, and, as a gesture of gratitude towards Padre Pio, circled the convent 3 times. During the last turn, Padre Pio felt a jolt in his body and began to exclaim, "I am healed! The Madonna has healed me." From that moment, he resumed saying Masses and hearing confessions regularly. To a spiritual son, he will confide, "The very day she left here, I felt well again." I returned to celebrate Mass 3 days ago. In the book Padre Pio in My Life, 𝐥'𝐞𝐯𝐤 𝐃𝐨, his closest spiritual daughter, recounts asking him, "Father, tell me a word about the Madonna." And the saint replied, "Jesus is the source. This water of eternal life could not come to you if it weren't for that blessed conduit, Mary. Jesus comes to us only through Mary. And so 𝐸𝐭𝐫𝐢𝐵, point me to a shortcut, then to reach God and the Father immediately. The shortcut is Mary. Let's pause again on the theme of the Holy Rosary. It is beyond doubt that if Padre Pio lived with the stigmata, he also lived with the rosary beads. If she bore the stigmata for 50 years, she held on to the rosary for her entire life. Both these mysterious elements, the stigmata of the rosary, are manifestations of her inner world. The stigmata, Jesus crucified, the immolation, the redemptive suffering, co-redemptive, the rosary, the salvation of the world in Marian prayer. Father Pio, as you know, did not preach, did not hold conferences, did not give theology lessons. Yet when you arrived at San Giovanni Rotondo, you were struck by a fact. Men and women could be seen, who might be professors, doctors, teachers, entrepreneurs, workers, all without human respect. With a rosary in hand at San Giovanni Rotondo, not only in church, but often also on the street, in the square, day and night, waiting for the morning Mass. Evidently, it was indeed the teaching, we might call it, of Father Pio, to invite everyone to take up the Holy Rosary and pray it. What mattered to Padre Pio was this. All knew that the Rosary was Padre Pio's prayer. Only for this reason, Padre Pio could be called a great apostle of the Rosary in the 20th century. And we could also add, do you agree that Padre Pio made San Giovanni Rotondo a citadel of the Rosary? I think you agree. San Giovanni Rotondo has truly become the city of the Rosary. One morning early, among the first to present herself at the confessional, was Miss Lucia Pinelli from San Giovanni Rotondo. More or less, it was around 7 in the morning when she heard Father Pio ask her, as she knelt down to confess, how many rosaries she had said that morning. It was 7, and she replied that she had completed 2 in full. 2 in full means either 2 entire rosaries or 3 times 2. That is joyful, sorrowful, glorious, and then again joyful, sorrowful, and glorious. It's unclear. It was around 7 in the morning, and Father Pio had already celebrated and confessed some men. All right, when she says she had prayed 2, it comes naturally to ask, Father, how many have you prayed? All right, it was 7 in the morning. He had celebrated Mass, confessed, and he replied 7 whole ones. 7 times 3 makes 21 rosaries he had prayed for. As he did this mystery, Elena Bandini, writing to Pius XII in 1956, wrote to the Pope. So evidently, writing to the Pope, it's a reliable piece of news that Padre Pio had confided to him that he recited 40 whole rosaries a day. 40 times 3 once again. Father Pio said rosaries everywhere. They always saw him praying, constantly moving his lips. In his cell, or in the corridors, in the sacristy, going up and down the stairs, day and night. Repeatedly asked how many rosaries he prayed, he would sometimes reply 40, other times 50. Asked how he managed, he replied to the questioner, "How do you not pray them?" An episode on the theme of rosaries is worth recalling. Father Michelangelo from Cavallara, originally from Emilia, a prominent figure, a fairly well-known preacher of that time, was also deeply cultured, but he had quite a temper. After the Second World War, until 1960, every May he would go to preach in San Giovanni Rotondo during the month dedicated to the Madonna. Then he would also preach for the Sacred Heart of Jesus in June, and for the Most Precious Blood. And this right in the convent of San Giovanni Rotondo. From the very first time, he was struck by Padre Pio. He wasn't lacking the courage to argue with him. He would engage in dialogue with him. One of the first surprises from this friar was the rosary beads he always saw in Padre Pio's hands. So one evening he approached him with this question, "Father, tell me the truth today. How many rosaries have you said?" Padre Pio looks at him, waits a bit, then says to him, "Listen, I can't tell you a lie because I don't tell lies. 30 or so." Then he stops, 32, then adds 33, and maybe a few more. Father Michelangelo was shocked and wondered how he could find time in his day, between Mass, confessions, communal life, for so many rosaries. He asked Padre Pio's spiritual guide, who was at the convent then. He met him in his cell and clearly shared Padre Pio's Q&A. Emphasizing the peculiarity of the response, "I don't tell lies," Father Michelangelo heard Father Agostino from San Marco in Lamas burst into laughter, saying, "If you only knew, then, that it's about entire rosaries." Father Michelangelo thought of 33 in total, never imagining that 33, as the spiritual father of Padre Pio tells him, indicates 33 full rosaries, 33 times 3. Got it? So we reach about 100, yes. Father Michelangelo at that point raised his arms to respond in his own way, "But this is impossible." But Father Agostino added, "You want to know, but first explain to me who a mystic is, and then I will tell you how Father Pio manages to say so many rosaries in one day." For Father Pio, living was praying, praying was remaining in contemplation, and St. John Chrysostom said that to contemplate means to live. The mystery of the number of daily rosaries of Father Pio remains to be clarified. He himself offers an explanation, however. The experiences regarding the number of rosaries recited by Father Pio are numerous, especially among his close ones to whom the Father confided his secrets. Miss Cleodis Morcaldi recounts that Father Pio one day, joking with his spiritual son, Dr. Delfino of Potenza, came out with this quip: "What do you doctors say? Can a man do more than one thing at once?" Responded, "But I think two, yes, Father. I can manage 3. The Father's counter-response was, "You should know that when I prepare catecheses, while preparing them and sometimes even while writing books, I hope to shock no one. I manage to pray the Rosary. Clearly it's a gift from God, I presume. I mean, when I prepare catecheses, since I wouldn't have time otherwise, many times I prepare them while praying the Rosary." In the same sense, one day while chatting in the cell with Father Michelangelo, he expressed himself. "Listen, they wrote that Napoleon did 4 things at once. What do you think? Do you believe? Even I can count up to 3, but 4? Father Pio this." All right, Father Pio confides that he was simultaneously praying and hearing confessions. He'd bilocate. When he was confessing, he was also focused on reciting the rosaries, transported by bilocation worldwide. The explanation, therefore, comes to us from above. Writes the Father that in one of his dialogues with Jesus, one day he heard, "How many times would you have abandoned me, my son, if I had not crucified you?" Here, Father Pio crucified himself, entirely relies on the Madonna, trusts in the help of the Madonna, and for this reason, he finds in the recitation of the Holy Rosary the precious weapon to fight against the devil directly. But then, in my book, I recount it here, there are betrayals that can be explained in the life of Father Pio. People who die for him changed instantly. And Father Pio remained calm because he knew it was the devil. And in that moment, instead of complaining and feeling sorry for himself, he prayed the Rosary and immersed himself. Sometimes they saw him physically sinking, thinking he was resting. He'd open his eyes, and they were eyes of fire, those of Padre Pio, to make it clear, I'm not sleeping. I'm immersed in the contemplation of John Paul II. It's beautiful, this connection between John Paul II in the past and today, Padre Pio. And there's an episode I'd like to tell you about regarding the gaze of the Holy Rosary. Once a mother with many children, a mother from Veneto, if not from Veneto, then from the north, she must have been from Veneto, went to see Padre Pio, and she complains to him, saying, "Padre Pio, I can't take it anymore." Father Pio asks, "What's happening, dear?" "Father, I have my children pray the Holy Rosary in the evening, but one runs off to chase the cat, another grabs a ball to play, and yet another I have to catch before he jumps into the fireplace." These Hail Marys never end, and this rosary is always so distracting. Father Pio looks at her and says, "Don't worry, my child, they pray just the same, because this rosary prepares the ground for vocations. Then they become priests. Doesn't it move you?" In this, Padre Pio attributed everything to the recitation of the rosary in the evening around the fireplace. And it's true, because today, if convents and seminaries are empty, it's because the rosary is no longer prayed in the family. Before, vocations flourished, and then Padre Pio said, "Don't worry if you don't finish the Hail Marys. Those you don't finish, the saints and angels will." I find this story truly moving because it shows how Padre Pio continually recommended the recitation of the Holy Rosary in every circumstance. And I'll conclude with a somewhat autobiographical episode in the sense that I am a witness. As a young priest, I went alone to San Giovanni Rotondo. I caught a fever. It was December. I don't remember the year. I wasn't even speaking. I don't remember. Maybe yes, I don't remember. And I think not, though, because December, I don't think it would have been possible. I was in San Giovanni Rotondo, and someone says almost everything is closed. It's freezing cold. The sleet is deadly cold. So after 6 in the evening, everything was closed in San Giovannino Togo, even the convent. Then in the evening they were supposed to do the rosary, but they canceled it because no one was there. So I looked for a place to sleep and went to a guest house, now a hotel, I can't remember the name, near the sanctuary. I discovered at the reception that there was hardly anyone there, just the receptionist, who had time to chat a bit to pass the time. He asked me where I was coming from, Father, and an elderly lady came in, saw me all dressed in clerical attire. I was thin, all neat, and the elderly lady said, "Look, it seems like when Carmelo Guativa came," because that was the guest house where in a similar cold situation, a young dear man went to visit Padre Pio in 46 and stayed in that place where I later went to sleep. But that's not what I wanted to say. It's what follows now. The lady then offered me dinner. I didn't pay. Maybe I did anyway. We sat down, and she told me something she used to tell all the pilgrims. She was a hospitable daughter of Padre Pio, or rather not her, the mother. I believe she was the daughter. So Padre Pio had her as a hospitable daughter of San Giovanni Rotondo, one of the first. Then he said, "You must make a guest house for the pilgrims. You must welcome those who don't know where to sleep." In fact, in this guest house where I went to sleep, John Paul II slept in 46, then the parents of Padre Pio. And so this lady obeyed, having a heritage available. This guest house was the first, one of the very first. Then others came, but for the files to do something else. And then Padre Pio told her, "And I recommend every evening have dinner early after you finish here with the Eucharistic blessing." Padre Pio gave the Eucharistic blessing every evening, and then the Holy Rosary after dinner. And so she recounted, this lady, that one day, one evening, her mother, it was very cold, really cold, it was dark in the thick of it. And then she said, after finishing eating, to the pilgrims, not many who were there, "Well, for this evening we won't pray the Rosary together, as Padre Pio had asked. But let's go to bed. We'll warm up under the blankets. Yes, yes, all right, all right." They barely finish saying that when they hear a knock at the door. He lies to believe this. Father Pio, they are astonished. It could have been 8:30 in the evening. Back then we went to bed early, let's say, later than 9. Father, you hear what struck me was, it was without Heavy clothes in that cold, yes, yes. The Father says, I came here to ask if you were praying the rosaries. Father, truly, she sank, and Father God was watching her, my daughter. You know how Father Pio was. Why am I a father then? And now I call you all, go immediately to call them. I told you that you must pray the rosary every evening. It is the devil who does not die. But Father, make yourself comfortable. I am coming now. Father Pio, I'm going to call. Excuse me, Father. Can you give me the pension? The door was closed. Father, can you give me the pension? Father Pio had gone into bilocation because he was informed by the guardian angels, especially of the spiritual daughter, that evening they were about not to recite the Holy Rosary. And Father Pio in bilocation had gone to say, pray the Holy Rosary. The last episode I want to tell you about is this. Once, Padre Pio forgot his rosary, left his cell, and had to go to confess. Walks down the road, and Padre Pio starts feeling unwell, as if he's short of breath, as if he's about to faint. The friars with him got worried. Father, what's wrong? Need help? Bring the crown now. He had forgotten the rosary crown, and he almost felt unwell. Probably the Madonna grants the crown, even the physical one, a sort of power, unheard of to withstand the assault of demons. And so we ask Padre Pio to always love the Holy Rosary. We wanted to give this tribute, so simple and beautiful, concluding again with what we started with. Padre Pio in his spiritual testament told us, love and make others love the Madonna, pray and make others pray the Holy Rosary. Praise be to Jesus, and forward with Mary.